Peter. We're going to hold questions till the end, till we have all of our speakers. Next is Olivier Menzel, who is currently head of strategic partnerships at the Health 2030 Swiss Genome Center and is trained as a pediatric surgeon, as I understand. But today he's wearing his hat as the founder of the BLACKSWAN Foundation in Switzerland, which supports research on rare and orphan diseases. Olivier.
Thank you. I'm not a surgeon, I'm just a PhD. Sorry. So thank you for having me. Thank you to give the voice to patients living with rare diseases. I'm not a patient. The BLACKSWAN Foundation, it's not a patient organization. It's not a patient-driven alliance. But we understood the urgency of patients. And the urgency for patients, it's a highly added value to promote and to support research. And just to come back on what was discussed this morning about multicultural, multi-languages problem, I grew up and come from the Italian part of Switzerland. I have a Swiss-German origin. I'm living in the French part, and we work very well together. So it's not a problem. We can work together. It's just a matter of will. So I have to find the pointer, which is here. Before to enter in some example of how people living with rare diseases can work very well and can be a very highly source of information and advice, I need to put that in perspective. So the European definition of a rare disease is less than 1 person out of 2,000, which is also accepted in Switzerland. But this definition, it's only numerical, it's not enough. Rare diseases are not communicable disease, are chronic, disabilitating, progressive, degenerative, and unfortunately, most of the time, are life-threatening. So there are very high level of complexity, and only a combined, a collaborative process can really lead to a treatment or at least to improve the quality of life of people suffering of a rare disease. 80% of them have genetic origins, and when we extrapolate some numbers around the world, you see that we estimate 6 to 8% of the world population is living with a rare disease. Unfortunately, 75% are children, which 30% of them will never reach the 50 years of birth, and even 35% of them die in the first year of life. When we compare that to, better known disease like HIV and malaria, you see that the estimation of people living with a rare disease is in double of number. The problem is that there are more than 7,000 rare diseases described in the literature, which complicated the research process. And when we compare the number of people living with a rare disease to the world population, you see that it's the third population in the world. There are some survey and some studies that has been performed by Global Genes, which is a patient organization based in the US, and you see that they estimate that rare disease impact more people than HIV and cancer combined. Our vision, of course, our main goal is to support rare disease, to bring new treatment, increase diagnostic, and by doing that, we support the knowledge sharing and the collaboration. And when I say knowledge sharing and collaboration, of course, I'm not thinking only about scientists, but patients living with a rare disease are also part in the process. And by doing that, we also try to have some advocate and awareness program, of course, always from the point of view of the science and research. The ultimate goal, of course, is to save lives and to be recognized as a public health and research priority. So at the BLACKSWAN Foundation, we try to amplify collective action against orphan diseases. And now some example how we do it. The first one, in 2012, here in Basel, we started the first Congress, International Congress on Research on Rare Diseases, where of course we invited people from different fields in rare diseases. So that was already a challenge because we try to put together people not working in the same, let's say, field or topics, but with the same problem, which are, of course, a scarcity of resource, also lack of samples, and the fact that less money is put in this kind of research. The collaborative process is absolutely mandatory. And the surprise of the first Congress was already that we estimated that at least 20 new collaborative projects started from that meeting point, because people had the time to discuss with others that maybe they were already known by name, but when you are going into your own meeting, you never have the time to listen what others are doing in other fields, in other topics. And another point of view, which was very nice, and we were surprised, not so surprised, but it was nice to have it, is that the implication of patients in that Congress, we know that at least 3 clinical trials started thanks to the meeting of scientists and patients. And even more, the time of find and include patients for the clinical trial was reduced by almost 100 times. I know one clinical trial that in the business plan it was planned 2 years to include patient. One patient organization in 2 weeks and a half collected the double of amount of patient necessary for the clinical trial. So you see that patients are very important at all stages of the research process. We also, just to come back, next Congress will be a collaborative, again, organization with the NIH and the team of Canada, and we are going to have the first American version of this Congress. We also have a platform for scientists and patients active in research where they can share knowledge, they can crowdfund projects early stage in order to get enough scientific proof of principle to then go in a more important grant supporting agency or other big foundation. And the main point is the value of the patient vision on science and the patient's observation of using some drugs or some scientific treatment in order to focus the scientific research. From other big international initiatives, you're probably all aware about RD Connect, which is a EU-funded project. And the RD Connect is an integrated platform which links different types of omics and like clinical information, patient registry, and biobanks. And the idea is to have them in a common source. And within the RD Connect, URDIS, which is the Patient-Driven Alliance for Patient Organizations, created what they call it the PAC, Patient Advisor Council, formed by rare disease patients. And the idea is to bring expertise by experience, which means that those people have a wide range of experience in biobank, bioinformatics, registry, data sharing, in order to support project progress and highlight issues to be explored, discussed, and considered. And of course, the main message in this group and others is that we absolutely need to take into account the patient perspective, and it is to promote and encourage data sharing. And an example is in an initiative also launched by URDIS, which is the Rare Barometer Voices. They just finished a big international survey with more than 3,000 participants on data protection, and result will very soon available. So here it's another focus group that was created by URDIS, and those are really the 4 main points resulting from this focus group. Of course, all recognize that data sharing is very important for high quality research. It will increase the diagnosis, and of course it will accelerate the treatment and drug development. So from the protection privacy, all patients recognize that it's absolutely critical. They understand the risk, and they are the first to say that we need safeguards. And of course, on the other side, it's very important to create capacity building to have the best information addressed to people living with rare diseases. From the securing content point of view, of course, they recognize that a consent to share data is absolutely mandatory. They feel very confident in the participation, but they also underline the fact that consent models should vary depending on the level of data that are shared. And they also suggest, and I think it's important, that the creation of consent should also include patients in order to encourage other patients to sign this kind of consent. They also underline that a robust governance is very important, a common regulatory framework, and that is, of course, should include patients. And from feedback on use, they would like to know what happened with their own data. They want to know the outcomes, and they want to communicate them. It is always to create also an environment of trust amongst patients in order to, increase the participation of patients. And of course, the initiative of data sharing has to be patient-centered and patient-centric. Those are some examples. I will not really enter in details where some work packaging has been discussed within the RD Connect, and you see that, of course, patients recognize that at the international level of data sharing, it's very important, and benefits are always higher than the risk. You see that patients or people living with rare disease participate in scientific publication underlying all these points. They also participated on reviewing recommendations to improve the quality of RD registry. They also participated on a panel of biobank assessment, and they are members of BBMRI. And always with this idea of communicate and start survey to really feel the needs and the vision of the patients. Another example is Reconnect, also an initiative of EURDIS. In fact, now it's an independent organization. The idea at the beginning was to connect people living with rare diseases, families, and patient organization, and to develop online community across continent and language, which with human live translation, in order that community all around the world, they can really discuss. And you see the number are quite impressive, and you can imagine the added value of information that you can get from this platform. And now there is a new partnership with the Children's Hospital in Canada, and the idea is to enable research and patients to enter genotype and phenotype data. And this is always with the idea to speed diagnosis, create new studies, add consent, and test them with the patient vision, start survey, invite other participants, because of course patients are more confident if the invitation comes from another participant instead of maybe a pharmaceutical company or other health structure. And this can also result in joining in a study where you can imagine maybe to capture longitudinal data like medication dosage and this kind of information. This is my last example. Foundation 29, maybe you know it. It's a not-for-profit organization with experience on artificial intelligence, and the idea is to develop programs and activities on life science, but always from a person-centric perspective. And within Foundation 29, they started the L29 project, which was developed and is developed by patient for patient, and the idea is to empower patient and support clinicians to speed up the access to diagnosis. So they offer different capabilities for patients for collecting complex set of data, including PRRMs, phenotypes, and genotype data. And those data, the important part, are coded using, of course, international approved standards, and also to facilitate the integration with other existing system and database. And the final goal, of course, is to promote research and generate treatments. But the important point here, for me at least, is that if they decide, so patient, they can be sure their data as they decide to do it and where they want to do it. So sometimes, and we had a discussion yesterday evening, I think that there are too many political, legal discussions which are absolutely mandatory and very good, but when we enter in a process of urgency, as Peter said before, I think we have maybe to overcome some political problem and just go for it, because those people, they don't have any treatment, and the only solution is that we start doing and acting now. So thank you for your attention.